I wanted to continue to share reading this introduction to Tantra by Lama Yeshe. And where he's really he's sharing his wisdom on how to connect with and have access to becoming awakened. You know, that the tantric path is sort of the lightning speed, fast train to awakening. But that to get there, a third of the book is about the foundation that we really have to have a strong understanding of before we even think about practicing Tantra, which is the three principal aspects of the path: the determination to be free, bodhicitta, and wisdom. So a third of this book is just, before you get onto the train, this is where you have to, you have to study, you have to figure out where you're going, and you better be ready. And so that, I've been really enjoying that, and that's really where I feel I can talk from some small experience. And that he really goes into quite a bit of detail in his most wonderful way, that we can't recognize, much less access, this amazing Buddha potential, at least among other things for now, is because we are so intoxicated, we are so stimulated, we are so mesmerized by the samsaric experience that we're having. And that the world, the samsaric world of sense pleasures, has really got us over a barrel. And that a day at the beach is a metaphor for any samsaric experience that we have, that we spend so much of our human energy, so much of our potential, trying to find the happiness which isn't there, trying to find happiness from that experience. And that we keep looking, and once again, trying to put this into my own life, is that I keep looking out there because there's just enough pleasure, and I keep getting hooked over and over again to really think that these objects are bringing me the pleasure and the happiness that I'm experiencing. And what I'm trying to wrap my mind around is that here I am trying to find this happiness in these objects, which by their very nature change moment by moment and don't last. The satisfaction that I find, whether it's for a split second or it's for a few months, becomes dissatisfaction after a while, and that they exist by being merely labeled, and that I've got myself so convinced that one of the main ingredients of the sense object or the sense experience that I'm having has got happiness as a main ingredient, radiating, oozing, coming from its own side. So what I think is happening is not what's there at all, but I'm being hypnotized, I'm being mesmerized, I'm being intoxicated by this sense. All my senses just driving this feeling that happiness, that pleasure is coming from outside myself. And I can imagine that almost everyone here in this room, everyone listening, has got their version of the weekend at the beach, where they find that they can see as their most favorite, their most pleasurable, their best sensual experience that they can have. I mean, it might be one thing, it could be a dozen things, it could be 100 things. But what I touched base with on thinking about this is that even with all those remarkable, transitory, fleeting, pleasurable experiences, do we really understand when we're sitting in the middle of that experience and we look at whoever's with us, or we say to ourselves, man, this is as good as it gets? Think about that saying. This is as good as it gets. And that basking in a samsaric experience for a while and really believing this. But when you truly look at it, it's an extremely truthful and sad statement about the experience of samsara. Lying on the beach, bobbing around the ocean, whatever your version is, it doesn't get any better than this. That's the truth. And now we have bought that. It doesn't get any better. And this is what Lama Yeshe is trying to point to us, is that we've got this, what he calls a low-grade happiness, that it doesn't get any better than this. We have been so happy with this since beginningless time. And that's why we continually get hooked. And sooner or later we get too old and feeble to enjoy even that. So when I thought about this saying, which I have said probably, I don't know how many times in my life, because some of those sense experiences are quite lovely, but it's like, this is where my bar is. This is where my standard of where my potential is feeling fulfilled. This is where my potential for my happiness can stay. And he does say it's the low-grade happiness. If we want permanent peace and happiness, we want to develop this potential that is inside. We've got to turn the direction around, because we're going to continually be intoxicated, and we're not going to be able to, as he says, we're not going to be able to recognize, much less access, this beautiful Buddha nature if we're continually hooked in the wrong direction, which is going for this low-grade happiness outside of ourselves. And what he says is, because this first of the three principal aspects of the path is the determination to be free, and he's got this remarkable definition. He says that renunciation is the mind emerging from its ordinary limiting preoccupation and taking an interest instead in realizing its unlimited, completely liberated potential. And that's what we want. We've been looking in all the wrong places, but that's what we want. Grasping at the sense pleasures of this life, hoping for lasting happiness, is a dead end. We have to recognize that the satisfaction, the deep happiness and peace that we want is not out there in sense objects. That's the first unhook. You know, what is it that we really truly want? What is it that we really truly want to develop as far as this vast Buddha potential? And to realize that it's not out there, but it's in here. And he calls it this inner simplicity. And that in fact, he says that the more we grasp at the external world, convincing ourselves that it doesn't get any better than this, hoping for some lasting peace and satisfaction, the more enmeshed we become, and the more removed we become from this unlimited, completely liberated potential within ourselves. So the more we're hooked, the impossibility of ever accessing this beautiful inner world of vast potential, this clarity and awareness of our own minds. We're too much out there, we're never going to access this. So the whole point of the determination to be free is, instead of taking refuge in these false appearances, we want to turn our attention to the right direction right here. We want to pack up the beach gear. We want to pack up the car. We want to turn off the radio or the VCR. I mean, they are pleasurable, but we've got to get the hook out of what we think is actually coming our way, what we're actually getting. We've got to be able to bring our expectations of samsara down and bring our realistic expectations of our own inner potential way, way, way up. And that's what we have to connect with. And so as I want to segue into the second principal aspect of the path, bodhicitta, he says, it's really important that the first place that we start is self-fulfillment. To realize our deepest potential. He said to become Buddhas, we've got to start there. The self-fulfillment is extremely important first piece. However, on page 45, which is a beautiful segue, okay, so let's say our desires are limited. We have realized that. The desires are limited to the possessions of sensory objects, while now, through the development of some renunciation, they are directed toward the realization of our deepest potential. But the emphasis still remains. I want this. I want that. And what is even more remarkable, says, is that we're concerned only about this one sentient being in this universe being fulfilled, disregarding all other countless sentient beings. He says even this self-fulfillment, this focus on actualizing our potential, becomes in and of itself an obstacle to realizing it. Because as long as it's self-liberation, as long as it's that permanent, he says whether temporal or ultimate, he says that self-fulfillment is limiting in and of itself and becomes an obstacle to realizing it. Because even our wish to liberate ourselves, to find this happiness that doesn't end, is still not as big as our minds and hearts can actually develop. And he says, as long as we stay tightly focused on our own happiness, temporal, ultimate, we will never experience the expansiveness of a truly open heart. Which kind of just brings the whole bodhicitta, which I'll talk about next time, is that, it's this idea that, we're finally trying to unhook ourselves from samsara. Now we're going to try to realize our full potential, our Buddha nature, and we're still cutting ourselves short. We still have a potential that's far beyond even self-liberation. And so next time I'll go and see what Lama Yeshe says about how we finally expand even our view of that self-liberation so that we can encompass all beings And where do we go and how do we do that to be able to bring ourselves to access and to actualize this amazing potential of becoming Buddhas that we all have?